Ali Khan Mahmudabad. He is a political analyst and a professor at Ashoka University. He joins us now live from Lucknow. Ali Khan, all right, so we are seeing reports of Daesh launching a campaign to recruit Indian Muslims in the wake of this controversial citizenship law that was brought on by the BJP. How disturbing is this?
Just the day after the violence in Delhi, Daesh launched a magazine called Sawt al-Hind, the Voice of Hind, and said, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ, and where are we going, aimed at Indian Muslims and sought to use the feeling many Muslims have felt in India of humiliation and political exclusion to basically say that this was the moment to sort of rise up. So far, terrorist groups, extremist groups have not really had a big audience in India. Very few people have gone and joined Daesh or ISIS and their fight, mostly actually from South India, from a particular state in South India, which is quite prosperous. But as this right-wing politics evolves in India, which is perceived to be built around the political, legal, institutional, and indeed social marginalization and exclusion of Indians, anger is rising. And we have to remember that 50% of India's Muslim population is under 19. Mm-hmm. They are growing up in this atmosphere. And of course, it is marginalization and exclusion, political exclusion, that ultimately leads to some people perhaps using violence to assert themselves.
Ali Khan, the reality is that Prime Minister Narendra-modi's BJP has been sort of pushing a nationalist agenda, a Hindu agenda, and has marginalized Muslims, Indian Muslims, as a result of this. But when you look at it as a whole, India's Muslims seem to be a community that wasn't very prone to radicalization. I mean, especially if you compare it to other countries. What do you think?
So I would say that I would actually change the language we use. I think we are moving from marginalization to exclusion. Some people say that Indian Muslims, there's something exceptional about Indian Islam, and that is why Muslims are not hearing or heeding these calls to jihad, to terrorism, and so on. I think actually what's more important in the last 70 years is, despite being economically marginalized, as various government reports over the decades have proven, they have been a part of the political process. They have found a voice. They have found secular opposition parties that have taken up the cause of minorities in India. But that space is shrinking, because what the BJP has done essentially is to pick up the center of Indian politics and shift it further to the right, which has meant that other parties, opposition parties, have also had to change their politics. So in a sense, my main point essentially is that there's nothing particularly exceptional about Islam in India which lends it towards not radicalizing or taking up arms or heeding to these calls. But actually, it was the fact that Indian Muslims were included in the various institutional, political, legal processes. But now the atmosphere that is being created, both politically and socially, through social media, through WhatsApp, is alarming, because that space is shrinking in which people see that they have a stake in society, have a stake in their country.
This is an interesting point, because whether it's the, according to you, the shifting of the BJP more to the right, or this new controversial citizenship law, you say that these moves have helped consolidate the Muslim identity over sectarian identities. Expand on that.
So, I mean, with the war on terror all over the world, there has been a quest for the last 20 years for the acceptable Muslim. Various countries have been doing it: America, England, various European countries, even in the Middle East. There has been some kind of loose consensus that has evolved that Sufism is somehow more acceptable. And this is something that the BJP initially tried to use, and tried to argue that certain Shia groups and Sufi groups in India were somehow more Indian because of their cultural practices and so on. And in a sense, the sectarian cleavages that exist all around the world amongst Muslims, but in India as well, were used in order to see if a constituency could be created amongst Muslims that would be pro-BJP. But with this law that has come in and has been passed by Parliament, people's particular sectarian identities have been subsumed by the broader concern that this law has brought about, that Muslims as a community are the target of the BJP. And therefore, people who were primarily viewing themselves as perhaps acceptable Muslims, Indian enough Muslims, are now realizing that actually the very fact of being Muslim is what stands in between them and being included as an equal citizen in this country.
All right. Ali Khan, Mahmudabad, thank you very much for joining us here on the NewsHour. I do appreciate your analysis.